After witnessing his colleagues in a zombie state, the deputy chief engineer returned, like a supremely confident commander, giving a command straight out for how not to handle a meltdown manual to start the cooling pumps. Everyone knew the reactor was beyond saving. Cooling was futile. Authorities spoke gravely, while operators harbored doubts. But no one dared to argue. Far from the reactor, radiation soared to 3.6 Röntgen, like getting 400 X-rays per IO. What's scarier is that 3.6 Röntgen was just the peak reading, not the real value. Only the deputy chief engineer could access the precise gadgets locked in a cabinet. At that moment, radiation levels in the reactor surged exponentially, and several workers were already feeling queasy, with facial flush indicative of radiation exposure as a bonus. Like baking in the sun too long, seeing birds signaled the reactor roof blew off. Props to the deputy chief's crew for their responsibility. They had to see the reactor state firsthand, but when they arrived, they were utterly stunned. The core had melted down to a crunchy snap. The shiny glow sent shivers down their spines, and the poor soul who helped open the door suddenly felt off. It was like their skin was being sucked at by radiation. With bleeding faces, Pripyat residents were unaware of a coming party. They gathered on the railway bridge out of curiosity. They marveled at the lethal blue glow as radioactive dust from the explosion began to waft around, truly a blue miracle. The black snowflakes stuck to their faces, and tragically, many inhaled it. Talk about the spoiler alert. The deputy chief engineer downplayed the incident to the factory director like he was selling fresh fruit, casually mentioning the radiation levels near the reactor hull. In reality, radiation hit 15,000 Röntgen, leaving the director and chief engineer feeling like on a roller coaster. As professionals, they could only wait, with the deputy director validating with precision instruments, while officials met 4 hours post-explosion. One official saw severity, suggesting evacuation, but the director was stubborn. Then an old man in the corner tapped his cane. "Listen to me." Everyone immediately fell silent and remained motionless, waiting patiently until the officials had all left the scene. The director called inspectors after officials left, only to find the precision measuring device broke on first use. 3 thought the equipment had did it, but the backup device borrowed from the fire department exploded, and he found graphite chunks. It indicated the reactor had blown up, not merely melted. The deputy chief engineer felt like an ant on a hot stove. Fearing that admitting it would make his career go poof, he wanted to verify his theories on the roof, but suddenly felt dizzy and collapsed. Fainting is a classic radiation symptom, contradicting his account. The chief engineer sent inspectors to the roof into murky waters. Seeing the inspectors' grim expressions, he commanded the soldiers to escort them, essentially sending them off to doom. An old saying comes to mind. When you gaze into the abyss, it gazes back. The deputy chief's act saved his life. However, brave firefighters, doctors, nurses, and civilians had their lives sealed on April 25, 1986. The doctor was tending to a firefighter's wounds when a nearby nurse shouted at him like she was the wild Adele of nursing. At once, she recognized the firefighter was severely radiated, his clothes virtually auditioning for radiation. The nurses piled the irradiated clothing into the basement, but within that short span, their hands were already getting toasted by the radiation. Meanwhile, an emergency meeting was underway in the Kremlin regarding the nuclear leak, with the atmosphere resembling a serious stand-up comedy show. The danger of this incident was minimized, almost like a relatively innocent mistake, and the news was completely hushed, leaving foreign media utterly in the dark. The leader, satisfied after the briefing, was just about ready to continue the meeting. As they prepared to make the winning move, nuclear expert Professor Legasov slammed the table, demanding attendees turn to page 3 for the casualties. It stated that a firefighter had suffered severe burns from a smooth black object outside the reactor. He deduced that the black object was graphite, only found from the core. Its presence outside the facility indicated not a tank explosion, but a reactor blast. The 3.6 Röntgen reading wasn't a small accident. It equated to 400 times the radiation. Moreover, 3.6 Röntgen was merely the maximum for cheap instruments, and the real radiation was likely far greater. If reality matched his hypothesis, Yumanis 235 reactor emissions would waft across the continent. Then, it would rain down, forever entwining itself in people's daily lives. It could even last 50,000 years. The leader felt uneasy after hearing. He immediately decided to send Minister S.H. Shabina with him to uncover the truth at the Chernobyl plant. A few hours later, the helicopter hovered over the nuclear station. Professor Legasov immediately noticed chunks of graphite scattered across the roof, and the entire reactor's rooftop had been completely blown away. Additionally, a multitude of radioactive light sources filled the air, indicating the core was fully exposed. Yet Shcherbina insisted on flying directly over the plant to witness it, prompting Legasov to quickly intervene. If the aircraft goes over the reactor, they could end up being nuclear criminals within a week. However, Shcherbina remained insistent, threatening the pilot with immediate execution for disobedience. When persuasion failed, Legasov cleverly spoke 28 words to the pilot. Thankfully, the pilot kept his wits and made a safe turn back to land. Chernobyl's director and chief engineer waited, insisting on a tank explosion despite Shcherbina's questioning. He dismissed Legasov's conclusions with disdain, calling him shameless. Little did they know, their lies were about to be exposed. Don't forget to like and subscribe.